Hello everybody, this is Mike Van Meter, and this episode of Recovery is Possible is brought to you by Retreat Behavioral Health, where there are endless possibilities for recovery. Retreat provides quality care at their leading mental health and substance use treatment centers, which are designed to offer patients truly personalized and comprehensive programs that are tailored to their needs. Retreat substance use and mental health treatment centers in Palm Beach County, Florida, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and New Haven, Connecticut do everything in their power to ensure that patients receive the highest quality treatment in a safe and comfortable setting. So reach out today at retreatbehavioralhealth.com or call at 855-802-6600 for more information. And folks, today, what I want to talk about is that emotional dysregulation that we all go through in life. And, I want to talk to you about just some things that have been going on recently in my life and what I did about it, and just use that to demonstrate what I'm talking about today. Many of you may know that my younger brother passed away a few weeks ago, and it was unexpected. As I mentioned, he's my younger brother, so he's obviously younger than me, and we were devastated by that horrible, horrible situation. And then a week later, my daughter gets engaged, which is a very joyous situation. I'm very happy for her. And then, of course, dealing with the aftermath with my brother's death and the dysfunction in the family that goes on after that, the extended family. And there was a lot of that, which is very sad and tragic. Now, the reason why I share that with you is because in the midst of all that, we have to stay in recovery. And why I thought that was an important topic to have today is I know when I'm working with patients in the hospital and I ask them, why did you relapse? If we're talking about people that have relapsed and come back into the treatment center, what you often hear is that my boss is mean to me, my wife left me, my dog died, somebody died. In some cases, I hear that somebody had died years ago. Or it could be recently, but the point is that there was a death in the family or any other problem that you have going on in life. And people say that that's why they relapsed. And so I want to address that because really when it comes to recovery, I think that there's a few important principles that you have to understand. And if you don't understand these things and really drill them into your head, it's going to be very unlikely that you get into long-term sobriety. And I know that that's something that was drilled into my head early on, and I'm going to just point those out because I can tell you, folks, between the death, the engagement, the dysfunction, running for a political office, which is stress enough on its own, but working, podcasting, teaching, doing all the things I do, I was able to stay sober through all of that. And I'm not patting myself on the back because it has nothing to do with me per se. What it means is that the one thing that I did do right through this whole process was follow the program. And that's going to be sort of the key to all this is understanding the program and then more importantly, following the program. Because I can tell you that I've had a lot of patients that come in to our unit and they can recite the big book. They know the program. They know it. They know it from the, intellectually. They know all the different things to say, all the right things to talk about, all the right things that people should do, but there's only one problem. They're not actually doing it. And we have to go from talking about it, knowing about it, to doing it. And that is the key to long-term sobriety. So when you're in the midst of all of this turmoil, what's going on? What's going on with you? It's emotional dysregulation. Our bodies are designed to survive. I've talked about this on this podcast before. We are designed to survive. If we're hot, we sweat, we're cold, we shiver, we have the sexual urge to propagate the human race so we don't go extinct. If you're sick, if you have food poisoning, you throw up and then you cleanse your body in other ways. And that all of that is designed for your body to survive and to regulate itself. There's a median point. There's a homeostasis, if you will, that your body is always looking for. And that's true physically, but it's also true emotionally. All of us have sort of a baseline, if you will. We have a baseline emotional state that we're in, and as long as we're in that emotional baseline, we're okay. That's kind of where we get through life on a daily basis. But as we all know, life is life. You have that boss that you don't like. You have that coworker you don't like. Sometimes things with your spouse don't go well. We have deaths in our families. We have graduations. We have high points. We have low points. It's called life. It's called life. That's what happens in life. There's ups and downs. There's pressures. There's points in your life where things are more difficult than other times in your life. But if you're an addict, right? If you're an alcoholic addict or you suffer from a process addiction, and again, those are things that you can become addicted to that you don't put into your body, like sex, gambling, gaming, pornography, those types of things. We can be drawn back into those when we are in that dysregulated state. We're not in that homeostasis where we've gotten off of our median sort of point. And we in recovery have to be especially aware, especially cognizant of our emotional dysregulation. Somewhere in the literature, Bill Wilson talked about this. He said that resentments, which are the number one reason why people go out and drink or drug, resentments are the realm for normal people, and we are anything but normal people. That's something that Bill Wilson said. And what he means by that is there are some other people that aren't addicts that can become emotionally dysregulated, and that's done by resentments. And a resentment is an unfulfilled expectation. There are people that can do that, and they can get away with it because they're not addicts. But if you're an addict, resentments can kill. They can literally kill. Why? Because they make us emotionally dysregulated, and then when we're emotionally dysregulated, we want to escape. We want to go into isolation. We want to remove ourselves from whatever pain, whatever we're facing. We don't want to face that anymore. That's what the dysregulation does. And what recovery does is it, gets us to remember what the main thing is. And if you are an addict or an alcoholic, what is the main thing? What is your top priority every single day? What is your top priority? Your top priority is to be sober. You do not have a more important or higher priority than staying sober. You do not. It is not picking up the kids. It is not spending time with the kids. It is not spending time with your spouse. And people say, yes, it is. My kids are my number one priority. Actually, staying sober is your number one priority. Because if you don't stay sober, then you're not going to have the kids. You're not going to have that job. You're not going to have all those things in your life. Now, you might say, oh, no, I'll have those. I have those. This isn't a problem for me. Actually, it is a problem for you because normal social drinkers and people that use drugs casually or recreationally that are not addicts don't end up in treatment centers. If you've gotten to that point, or you've gotten to the point where you feel that you need to, you know that that line has been crossed, and now your number one priority is to get sober because addiction is progressive. It will get worse over a period of time, never get better. There are no exceptions, and you will not be the first exception. It gets worse over a period of time. And so this needs to be your first priority. I mean, after all, if I was to go and talk to your family members, they would probably say that they think it should be your number one priority. And if they think it should be your number one priority, it probably should be. Now, with that, you have to understand that that's the number one priority. Now, with recognizing that what you have is the disease of addiction, and it is a disease of the body and the mind. You have that. You have the disease. And once you've kept that foremost in your mind, and then recognizing that resentments and anger is the realm of people that are not addicts, then you always have to be cognizant of that. Always cognizant of that. So when you go into a situation and you have something in your life that throws you off, a death, dysfunction, loss of a job, loss of a marriage, loss of income, whatever it is that you're facing, what's your number one issue? Your addiction. And you cannot go back out and use because it will trigger that progression that you have. It's the first use. It's the first drink or drug. It's going to start that whole physiological process again, that obsession to use. It will start it. You had it in remission. Now it's started, and it will get worse. So that started. So when you're emotionally dysregulated, you go back to that first part, that step one, if you will. That's step one. Step one of the 12 steps is I'm powerless over alcohol. My life's become unmanageable. And remembering that. And then from there, starting to work on what is it that's making me emotionally dysregulated? In addressing it. Is it because you lost your job? Is it because you've had that death? Is it because there's somebody in your family that's irritating you? And then you say, I'm going to go out and have a drink. You get the F-its, you get the screw-its, as we like to call it in recovery. Just screw it. I'm going to go, what's the point? What's the use? I'm going to go ahead and use anyway. Well, what we do is we sit back and say, but what is that going to fix? You're going to take the problem that you have and just make the problem worse. And now everyone in your life, your family, your friends, your employer, your coworkers, their lives just got worse because you started using. It's not fixing anything, but will certainly make it worse. But realizing that to a great extent in what we're talking about, and this is something that a lot of people that struggle with addiction just seem to have a hard time. And when I say that, I'm talking about all of us, me included. In early recovery, it was me. This is people that think that these things only happen to them, or when these things happen, it's happening worse to them than it happens to other people, and that no one understands. And none of that is true. First of all, these things do happen to everyone else. The only way I can put it is, really what we're talking about is life. People lose jobs. People lose marriages. People have struggles in their relationships. People struggle at work with coworkers. People die. You know, if you live long enough, we're all going to have people that die in our lives. It's not meant to be cold. It's just a fact that it will happen to all of us, and then eventually it will happen to us, because none of us are getting out of life alive. None of us will live to be 200 years old, 300 years old. We're all going to die at some point. Now, that sounds insensitive. It sounds cold. It's really not. That's what we do in recovery. In recovery, we face life as life is. We face life on life's terms, not our terms, but on life's terms. And because we have used drugs and alcohol to not face reality, face those facts, we've learned to use that as an escape. Now, in the early days, what you're facing is the true physiological addiction, meaning your body actually physically becomes addicted. For example, alcohol. Your body becomes dependent. That's why we call it alcohol dependence, drug dependence, because your body has physiologically become dependent upon whatever that substance is. It's become dependent on it. That's why you have to go through detox. That's why you go through treatment, because alcohol, in particular, alcohol is very dangerous to withdraw from. You can have a stroke, seizure, or a heart attack, and we don't want that to happen. And if you're listening to me right now and you're struggling with that, understand that you should not just quit drinking cold turkey. You should be medically walked down, professionally supervised, so you don't have a stroke, seizure, or a heart attack. But once we've gotten through that process, then what we're dealing with is the emotional part, the dysregulation, and we have to do those things. But your body, your brain, your addicted brain has become dependent on something difficult in life happening, something unpleasant in life happening. Let's check out. And then that whole progression, that obsession, which does not occur in non-addicts, that begins. And it's very, very difficult to put that back into remission. I've heard it often said in recovery that it's much easier to stay in recovery than to get in recovery. And I can tell you that that's true. It is very, very true. It's much easier to stay in recovery than to get into recovery. And that's one of the motivations to not ever pick up. Those of you that have been through treatment before, those of you that have been in recovery for some time and then maybe relapsed, you know how difficult it is to come back from that. It's just easier to stay where you are, meaning staying in recovery. It's kind of like your car, if you think about it. You know, your car, to go from 0 to 60, it's a lot of effort. You burn a lot of fuel, right? You know, if you drove everywhere with the gas pedal all the way down, you're going to go through gas very quickly. You know, that's why your mileage on your car, your average mileage out on the highway is much higher than it is in the city, because you're not, once you get to speed on a highway, it just takes a little bit of effort to keep the car at that speed. Well, our lives are the same way, and recovery is the same way. It's a lot of effort to get into recovery, because you're always just putting that effort in, going through detox, going through treatment, getting reestablished in the program. I can tell you, and after years of recovery, it is much easier to stay in recovery than to get into recovery. But those bumps, those life bumps, those emotional bumps come up, kind of like the speed bumps. You know, you're going down a road, you're going real fast, and then you see a speed bump ahead. What do? You slow down, then you have to speed up again. Well, it's true in our lives too. And so what I just went through over the last month and a half was that speed bump. Had to slow down. But the nice thing was that being in recovery and practicing those principles, I was able to stay focused, keep the priority, never forget what the priority is. Number one priority is stay sober. Number one priority is to not become part of the problem, but become part of the solution. And that's what I did. And a big part of that is we have to understand that we are not the only sick people out there. There's a lot of other people that are sick. You know, after all, we have a program to work with. We have a program of recovery. We have a path. We have a plan. Others don't. You know, one of the first things you realize when you come into recovery is that we're not the only ones that are sick. There's a lot of other people that are sick out there, but they don't have a program that they can depend on, a guide, people to talk to, people to share with, people to share those struggles with, to give them other perceptions, other ways of looking at things, and encouragement to stay centered, to stay focused, to come up with ways to, healthy ways to deal with that emotional dysregulation, whether it be working out, service to others. That's a big one. Spending time talking to others that are struggling and that are hurting. Getting back into the literature, developing our faith, reconnecting with our faith. But the big one is helping others, getting out of yourself. Because after all, addiction is isolation, recovery is community. Addiction is isolation, recovery is community. And staying in that community and staying around others and being with others and sharing with others, that's how we stay well. You know, and when you get into recovery, I have to say this too, that particularly if you've been in recovery for a long period, there's a point where you just get this sense that you begin to have a higher purpose. You know, we talk about a higher power in recovery. We talk about having a higher power, depending upon that higher power. And whatever that may be, it could be God, doesn't have to be, it could be the group, it could be a mission, it could be something you're involved in, an organization to better the community, helping others, whatever the case may be. But the bottom line is we have the higher power, but then we become focused on that higher mission once we realize that there's a higher power. And in that higher mission, we realize that we kind of float above these problems that are going on, and we have an insight into what's going on around us. And we can see it clearly because we're not drinking and drugging. And when we can see the problem clearly and what's really going on, then we can address it and realize that these problems are not always about us. As I shared with you, there was a lot of chaos in the family that came along with the tragedy of my brother passing away. And I was able to realize that the people, you know, I'm not the only one that's suffering. There's a lot of other people that are suffering. And some of the people that are suffering have not addressed some issues that they have. And you begin to realize that there are those that have issues and they are not addressed. And those issues are causing them to do things that maybe they wouldn't normally do. Or they are doing things that they would normally do, but with disregard for what those things, how those things affect others. And that's important to understand, because when you understand that, you realize that it's really not about you, it's about them. And you can sort of get above that and realize that as bad as that is not a reason for you to go out and use. Because then when you do, then you make it about you. And you forgot issue number one, which is that you cannot drink or drug safely, ever. That's important. That's an important distinction. And then once that happens, because this dysfunction that you're seeing isn't just affecting you, it's affecting everybody around you. And you can be the adult in the room. And that's one of the things that we do in recovery. Is I heard it said one time is we grow up and we show up. And in recovery, you begin to become the adult in the room and to help those around you that are affected by this dysfunction and encourage them, because we become part of the solution rather than creating another problem. You can see clearly. You're not in the fog. You're not in the fog. And you can see clearly. And that is so, so important. But never forget the basics. That's why in early recovery, the only thing I really did right this time around was just become very grounded in the basics. Become grounded in the basics. And I was blessed to have a sponsor that just drilled that into my head. He always talked about game day, game day, game day. If you're an athlete, you're throwing that pitch over and over and over. You're doing the plays if you're a quarterback over and over and over. If you're a pilot in the military, you're practicing emergency procedures over and over and over. Why? Because when game day happens or that emergency happens, if you're in an aircraft, you are prepared and you know exactly what to do, and you do it reflexively because you've done it many times before. And so if you're listening to this and you're struggling, what I will just implore you to do is work on the basics of the program, drill them into your head, go to lots of meetings, become very familiar with the program, get a good sponsor, and drill this into your head over and over and over. So when that day comes, game day, if you will, you are prepared for that and you can get through it safely, because you can. You can. Recovery is possible. It is. I assure you it is. Your life, the lives of everybody associated with you will be better. Your life will be better. And this community will be a better place. It'll be a safer place. And you will be able to maximize your life to do what you were created to do, and that is to be of service to others. We need it. We need it. Because addiction in this country of all kinds is on the increase. It is not on the decrease. It is on the increase, particularly with this fentanyl epidemic. And we need people out there to do what they can to help others. And so that's really just my message for today. I'm encouraged that many people out there are listening to this podcast, and I'm sure that it's helping many of you. But spread the message. This isn't about me putting a message out. It's about everyone getting well and helping others to get well, because we are here to help one another. Guys, take care, and I will talk with you soon. And again, this episode of Recovery is Possible is brought to you by Retreat Behavioral Health, where there are endless possibilities for recovery. Retreat provides quality care at their leading mental health and substance use treatment centers, which are designed to offer patients truly personalized and comprehensive programs that are tailored to their needs. Retreat substance use and mental health treatment centers in Palm Beach County, Florida, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and New Haven, Connecticut do everything in their power to ensure that patients receive the highest quality treatment in a safe and comfortable setting. So reach out today at retreatbehavioralhealth.com or call at 855-802-6600 for more information. You guys take care of yourselves. Again, this is Mike Van Meter from Recovery is Possible. Get out there, do great things, and we will talk with you next time.